Well, welcome back everyone, and today we're going to move along in chapter 2 as we finish out, and today we're going to be looking at ethics. With all of the scandal that has gone on in the past and corruption that has gone on, ethics is needed more and more today in business and unfortunately in our churches. So today we're going to take a look at the concept of ethics, which is really the practice of behaving in an appropriate manner. Ethics is really the study of how to behave in society. Now, business ethics, and that's what we're going to be considering, is how to behave in the workplace. So let's go ahead and start with ethics in the workplace. Well, today, class, we're going to finish out chapter 2 with ethics, and we're going to take a look at outsourcing and offshoring and some options that you have as a manager in being able to produce whatever it is that your organization encompasses. And also we're going to take a look at the psychological contract, which is just the basic understanding that both the employee and the employer have in the employment relationship. One of the biggest scandals to ever hit Western business was Enron. Now I'm going to give you a link to the Enron video that I want you to take a look at this week. But I want you to see how such a big corporation brought so many people down because of unethical practices and so forth. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody felt guilty because of what they were doing. But many lives were ruined. Life savings were eradicated because of a few people who decided to be greedy, who decided to deceive, and who ultimately caused the corporation to fall and file for bankruptcy. So ethics today, as a result of that, is pretty much a standard in many schools today as a part of a curriculum that teaches people right and wrong in the business world. Now, we have ethics in society, and that's a class, but we also have business ethics in business that teaches us how we should behave. Now, isn't it ironic that we have to have classes today to tell us how we're supposed to act? As Christians, we shouldn't have that. Christians, we should already know because we have the authority, the Bible, to go by. But today, let's take a look at how ethics is such an influential element in how companies do business. Now, what's the definition of ethics? It's a person's belief about what constitutes right and wrong behavior. Now, here's the thing, and this is the problem that I have with this definition. It's a person's belief. There's no belief to it. There is right and wrong, especially when it comes to business. Now, I had one labor attorney tell me one time, he said, "Tom, there are so many laws out there and regulations that it is virtually impossible for every organization to keep every law, statute, regulation out there. So the successful business is the business that knows which laws they can break, which ones to bend, and to know the difference." Now, that's a sad testimony coming from a person who has sworn to uphold the law and to defend the law and interpret and to be able to articulate the law. But it is what it is today. But according to the textbook, it's the person's belief. And when greed takes in, you would be surprised at what you believe in. When the influence of success and popularity and promotions and money and all of that get involved, your beliefs can change very quickly. So ethics, from a definition standpoint, involves that belief in what's right and wrong. Now, there are contemporary ethical issues, financial abuses resulting from rapid changes in business relationships and organizational structures. One of the violations that Enron committed was financial fraud. So financing comes into a big part of an organization's ethical behavior. Executive compensation. Now, there's a lot of controversy today that involve executive compensations. Should executives be paid as much as they're getting paid? There are many executives today who are making over $1 million a year, but the employees are making minimum wage. Should there be that wide of a expanse between the employee and the CEO and so forth. Some people argue that the employee doesn't have the responsibilities that the executive has, nor the education or training or abilities and skills to make that organization successful so that employees can have a job to earn money. But this is, both sides of the coin, a big issue. Environmental protection. And here we see companies being socially responsible in as much as the environment is concerned. Working conditions in foreign factories. There's a film on Nike. Nike's had some bad publicity over the years. They're right now going through some bad ones with some bad publicity with this flag issue, but Nike's notorious for really paying workers overseas not even a living wage. And they live in horrible conditions, kind of like sweatshops. Well, some of them are sweatshops. So there are working conditions that can constitute either ethical or unethical practices. Pricing policies, and then pressures to balance profits against cost. So the company's responsibility is to increase its revenue, increase its profit, but many will argue at what price are companies willing to pay and how far are they willing to go just so that they can increase the bottom line. Now, managerial ethics, you have the employees, then you have the organization, and you're going to have a back and forth relationship. Employees are looking after their best interest, organizations are looking after their best interest, and the two come together. So I'll let you take a look at that, and then we'll move on to the next slide, which involves ethical issues in corporate governance. Now, corporate governance is the oversight of a public corporation by its board of directors. If you're incorporated, then that means you have a board of directors who really provide oversight for that organization. Mid-America has a board of directors, and they have to approve everything that we do, from the budget to hiring to all types of different things. Now, they don't get into the everyday details of scheduling and all of that, but for the major decision, the board of directors provide governance. And then you have governance issues, which means proper management of the business in the best interest of the stakeholders. Now, here is where I and the authors kind of diverge. Now, what's a stakeholder? Let me first of all address that. A stakeholder is any and everybody who has an interest in that organization. It can be the employee, it can be the employer, it can be management, it could also be the community in which that organization exists. It could be political officials. It could be any and everybody who stands to have some type of, receive some type of impact from that organization. Now, the stakeholder approach to management means that since there are so many people involved in the organization that you need to keep happy, knowing who is the one who is the most important to keep happy at that moment is the key to successful managers. For instance, you may have to woo over the community to be able to put a business where you want to put it in that community. So they would be your most important stakeholder. Then you may have to talk to government officials to receive concessions and approvals and go-aheads to be able to build and so forth. So they would be at that time the most important stakeholder, and so on and so forth. But now, here's where I believe the difference is in what they believe and what I believe. I believe the most important person, the best interest, is the stockholder. The stockholder is the one who is investing money in that company. You see, the community may not invest money in that company. The politicians may not invest money in that company. But the stockholder will invest money in that company. And if the stockholder is not happy with you, they're going to withdraw their money, and you have no company whatsoever. So some will say stakeholder, some say stockholder, but the bottom line is that trying to please any of these can lead you to do unethical things. And Enron's priority was to impress the stockholders so that their stock price would go up. And it did for a while until they discovered, the Securities and Exchange Commission discovered, that they were doing illegal things, and that brought it all down. Also, independence of the board from the business. Information technology issues include individual rights to personal information, abuse of information technology, and because of what we have with hacking and security breaches and so forth, information technology is an important resource, but it also can be a source of frustration and it can cause problems. But how much of a right do you have to personal information? How much should an organization be able to obtain on you? And should they be able to use technology to be more invasive? Do they have a right to go onto Facebook or your social media to be able to take a look at the people you associate with and so forth? Some say it's a violation of privacy, and some say no, it's just part of the hiring process and so forth. So there are those information technology issues that are going to have to be addressed. And then you have social responsibility. Businesses living and working together for the common good and valuing human dignity. Coca-Cola, if you take a look at their CSR, which is short for corporate social responsibility, if you take a look at their info video on YouTube, you'll see how they provide drinking water to remote areas of the world who would not normally have that. So they are engaged in a global effort to improve the community, to improve the world. And companies who here are locally that are doing work to improve the city and improve the area around us, these are people who are engaged in social responsibility. And it works best when integrated with the firm's culture. So with that diversity, you can have that diversity line up with the organization's strategy to engage in corporate social responsibility. And that's when you're really at an optimal level of performance. And then encompasses concern for employees, the community, and the environment. It's also a good plug for your company to make sure that they understand and that the people around you know that you care about them and you care about the community and the environment, and can lead to higher profits and talent acquisition. And then new employment relationships, management of knowledge workers. Now again, we are in the information age now. So people who are knowledge workers are the ones that companies are trying to recruit today. And employees who add value in an organization simply because of what they know is one of those. Now, knowledge worker is more than just someone who has experience and so forth. People who work in the knowledge generating industry, such as computer scientists, engineers, video game developers. It's a pretty diverse list, but people who work with information, people who work in knowledge in that industry are the ones that we have to provide strategies for today to retain and to acquire. What are some of their issues? They have working arrangements that are unique and performance motivation requirements. At Microsoft, for instance, Microsoft is the software company, and you don't have 9 to 5 workers. They come in when they want to come in. If they want to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning and work till 5 or 3 or 4, that's fine. There are no requirements on them. There are no rules and regulations, but they are responsible for getting their projects done on time. So if it takes you 12 hours to do a project or 200 hours to do a project, however long it takes within the restraints that the company gives, then you're expected to perform. So they're very demanding, and they are very strict in what they require, but they give you all the freedom in the world to be able to do whatever the objectives are on your own terms, as long as you just get the job done. So you have to look at your compensation package. You have to pay them based on what they provide, the value that they provide, and you may not be able to give them the same as you would your other workers in the organization because they offer a different set of skills and knowledge, and you're going to have to develop compensation packages that will accommodate those different skills and knowledge. Now, when it comes to employment relationships, you have outsourcing, and that's just taking a part of your operation and letting a third party go and do it themselves. Instead of hiring internally, you're just hiring a firm to do work that you would normally do yourself. The advantages, you don't have to retain employees all the time. So that helps you focus on keeping a smaller workforce with the less overhead, and it also helps you to focus on core activities. If your core activities is manufacturing, then you might want to outsource the administrative activities so that you can focus strictly on manufacturing. The labor cost, as I said, is lower because you are sending the work out to other people and you don't have to hire full-time people. Disadvantages of outsourcing: disaffected employees, reduction of domestic job opportunities, and that's really outsourcing to a foreign competitor or to a foreign vendor. Now, offshoring is the practice of outsourcing workers to other countries to lower labor costs. It results in loss of jobs in the home country. It's a controversial issue, and you have temp and contingency workers, and these are the ones you're probably familiar with. They're on-call workers who come in and they just perform a task for a certain amount of time and then they're gone. You don't have to pay them benefits because they work for another agency. Then you have tiered workforce, and that's when one group of an organization's workforce has a contractual arrangement with the organization objectively different from another group performing the same job. And then you have also the psychological contract, and that's how we're going to finish up today with the psychological contract. And what is that? You have a person's overall set of expectations regarding what he or she will contribute to the organization and what the organization in return will provide to the individual. When you go to work, whether it's in church or whether it's in a business, you have a certain amount of expectations that you just naturally expect the organization to fulfill. You want to work in a safe work environment. You want to work in a hostile-free work environment. You want to be able to depend upon the pay and that they will pay you what they promised. In return, and these are just a few things, in return, the organization expects you to be there on time, for you to do what you are being hired to do, that you will be productive, and that you can or that you will stay in that company for a reasonable amount of time at least. So you come to the table and they come to the table with certain expectations and beliefs. And if those are violated, then you have problems. You have absenteeism and turnover and so forth. But the psychological contract is really the unspoken or unwritten expectations that people have when it comes to the relationship in business. And these are just some of the contributions that the organization and the person brings to the table. And here's just a figure 2.4, which talks about that. I'll let you guys take a look at that, and that will close us out for this week. God bless you, and we'll begin next week with chapter 3. As I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's unfortunate that we have to have classes and lessons on how to behave correctly. You know, for Christians, the Bible is our guide. The Bible is what teaches us how we should behave and how we should act in situations. So we have not only a legal and a moral obligation to do what's right, to behave in a godly manner, we have a spiritual mandate as well. And hopefully today, by understanding some of the nature of ethics, you gain an appreciation of it, and you'll be better Christian stewards of not only your organization but your ministries. God bless you, and we'll resume with chapter 3.